Without further statements, the executive session is now adjourned. We will now turn to the hearing of the nominations of Ms. Abby Warren for Assistant Secretary of Export Administration at the Bureau of Industry and Security at the Department of Commerce, Mr. Irving Dennis for Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and Mr. Brian Johnson for Director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We'll wait for the nominees to come on in.
What do we do? That's not Cruz County. You can't fool me.
All right. We were also going to have a few senators actually introduce our witnesses, but obviously with this delay, they will not be here. Thank you for standing. Will you please, I will now swear in the nominees. Will you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Do you agree to appear and testify before any duly constituted committee of the Senate? You may sit down. Your written statement will be made part of the record in its entirety. Please keep your oral comments to 5 minutes. Today, the committee will welcome these 3 nominees for important roles that they will play. I've already talked about each of the nominees and the roles that they will play. I want to thank each of you for your willingness to serve our country, and I welcome your families as well, and I will say, we apologize for the delay that is unusual, unexpected, but important. The positions before us span different agencies, but each carries a significant responsibility, making government work for the American people. In South Carolina and across the country, families want a government that respects their hard-earned tax dollars, protects our national security, and expands opportunity. They deserve experienced leaders who will follow the law, remain accountable to Congress, and remember whom they work for. Each of the nominees before us today brings a strong record of leadership and deep experience in the agency or policy area they have been nominated to serve. That experience matters. They have demonstrated that they are dedicated to the missions of their agencies, the limits of government power, and the duty that comes with public service. Mr. Dennis, if confirmed as HUD's CFO, you will be responsible for safeguarding billions of taxpayer dollars and strengthening the programs families rely on. Every dollar misused is a dollar that cannot help a family access safe and affordable housing. Ms. Warren, export controls are among our most important tools for keeping sensitive American technology out of the hands of our adversaries and how we ensure the global AI race is won here at home in the United States and not by China. If confirmed as Assistant Secretary for Export Administration, your decisions will impact our national security, but also affect small business, the health of our technology sector, and American competitiveness. We must keep sensitive technology away from our enemies while making sure America continues to lead, innovate, and compete. Mr. Johnson, you've been nominated to lead the CFPB at an important moment for the agency. If confirmed, you will be responsible for protecting consumers while keeping the Bureau focused on its mission and within the law. Families and businesses deserve clear rules, fair treatment, and access to affordable financial products. The standard for all 3 nominees is simple: commitment to the mission, serve the American people, and make government work better for families. At the heart of this committee's work is a belief that every American deserves a fair shot at building a better life. That requires leaders who understand that government decisions affect paychecks, homes, small businesses, communities, and the country our children will one day inherit. I look forward to hearing from each of you today and working with my colleagues to move these qualified nominees forward.
Sure, absolutely, of course.
Senator, you want to introduce one of our nominees?
I would love to.
And then we'll hear from
And
the ranking member.
Thank you, Senator Warren, for this. Chairman Scott and Ranking Member Warren, and members of this committee, I'm very pleased to be here this morning. Thank you all for what you do to promote a common sense regulatory strategy and a resilient financial sector in our country. As you may know, I once served as a member of the House where I chaired the Financial Institutions and Consumer Credit Subcommittee of the Financial Services Committee. And this is how I first came to know and work with our nominee, Brian Johnson. Brian is a native of Columbus, Ohio, but we won't hold that against him. He's close to West Virginia, as we know, a neighbor of our state. He graduated with an undergraduate degree from the University of Virginia in economics and a law degree also from that fine institution, the University of Virginia School of Law. He began his employment with the Financial Services Committee in 2012, where I was. He worked closely with me and my team to advance common sense legislation that addressed the regulatory burdens facing our community and our community financial institution and ensure greater accountability within our financial regulatory agencies. I knew Brian then as a diligent and thoughtful staff member, as someone who was devoted to serving the public with integrity, and I saw firsthand his thoughtful approach to complex, and they are complex, consumer finance policy issues. Brian has since moved on to other roles, including as Deputy Director of the CFPB. He brings strong technical expertise as well as practical understanding of how financial policy decisions affect our families, our consumers, and small businesses around our country. I do not doubt that he has the experience and judgment to serve as the CFPB's next director, and President Trump has made an excellent choice. He will ensure the agency sticks to its original charter, not go beyond that, as we have stated recently and reaffirmed through the Working Families Tax Cut Act that was passed last year. If the Senate confirms him, and I hope that we will, I am confident that Brian will faithfully discharge his responsibilities for the benefit of the American consumer and our financial markets. Congratulations on your nomination, and thank you both very much.
Thank you, Senator. We'll hear from our ranking member, Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. President Trump's second term has been a failure by pretty much every count. First, the president has failed to meet his #1 promise to lower costs on day one. That was his promise. Second, Donald Trump is the most corrupt president in history. He is making billions of dollars on his own shady crypto deals. Decision after decision seems designed to enrich the president, his family, or his Wall Street buddies, sometimes all three. And third, President Trump seems to be selling pardons for white-collar criminals who make the right donations. Now, Trump's government is running up costs for middle-class families and refusing to help those families when they get cheated. And today, the committee has a full panel of nominees who will be expected to implement and defend President Donald Trump's willingness to turn his back on Americans' financial troubles. We have Abby Warren, who's already been at the Commerce Department for over a year as the Trump administration has rolled back export controls on advanced AI chips and undermined our national security. And Irving Dennis, who's been acting CFO at HUD and apparently thinks he deserves the role permanently while the agency continues to illegally freeze federal housing funds. But I want to focus in particular on Brian Johnson, President Trump's nominee to be the director of the CFPB. This is the only government agency that exists to look out for hardworking families who get cheated on financial products. Its only mission is to help out families that are getting ripped off by their credit card company or unfairly charged by their banks or scammed by payday lenders. Last week, we had the acting CFPB head, Russ Vought, testifying right here before our committee. And Mr. Vought, backed up by President Trump, spent 18 months trying to kill the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He failed. Even so, he has done plenty of damage, taking the cop off the beat and costing American families over $26 billion. That is money directly out of the pockets of hardworking Americans. And when he couldn't kill the agency, Director Vogt decided to turn it upside down, to make it work for the scammers and the tricksters and anyone else willing to pay Trump and his buddies. The financial industry, the big banks, the tech firms, and their wealthy CEOs have lined up, making millions of dollars in campaign contributions and sucking up to Trump personally with shady donations to his ballroom and his library and his other vanity projects. The payoff? Well, the fines are withdrawn, the investigations are closed, and settlements are reduced to the lightest possible slap on the wrist. It's corruption, plain and simple, and it's costing the American people billions of dollars. And that brings us to Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson brings his own unique baggage to this job. He has made a career out of spinning through the revolving door, shifting in and out of government jobs with stops as a well-paid hired gun for the big banks and financial firms in between. Mr. Johnson has been at Capital One since 2024, and wouldn't you know it, in 2025, the CFPB dropped a $2 billion enforcement action against Capital One. How convenient. Oh, and how profitable for Capital One. At a minimum, Mr. Johnson owes us answers on what role he played in getting that case dropped. But more importantly, Mr. Johnson has to explain to the American people, how is it that they're supposed to believe that after collecting big paychecks from giant credit card and other financial companies, he will suddenly be sticking up for middle-class families? But for everyone who already had doubts about Mr. Johnson, Acting Director Vogt testified last week and told us exactly why he should not be confirmed. The most damning thing about Mr. Johnson's nomination is that he has gotten a rousing stamp of approval from the outgoing director, Russ Vogt, who spent a year and a half trying to kill the agency and who now says Mr. Johnson will, quote, do a great job running it, running it into the ground. Mr. Chairman, the American people need watchdogs, not lapdogs, at the CFPB. If Mr. Johnson is confirmed, I am concerned that he will continue this cycle of corruption that is costing the American people billions of dollars. And that's why I believe it would be a mistake to move forward with his nomination. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We have Senator Ted Cruz here to introduce Ms. Abby Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a privilege to be with the members of the committee this morning. I'm honored to have the opportunity to introduce Abby Warren, President Trump's nominee to serve as Assistant Secretary for the Department of Commerce. Abby previously served as my Chief Counsel for Oversight and Investigations on the Senate Commerce Committee, where she led our investigations and oversight efforts with professionalism, integrity, and dedication. During her time on the committee, she helped draft critical legislation, such as the Terms Act, which would require online service providers to admit their political biases, allowing consumers to make more informed decisions about where they choose to do business. She also spearheaded our efforts to promote good and honest governance at the Department of Commerce on behalf of the American taxpayer. Simply put, Abby helped advance common-sense conservative solutions on some of the nation's most pressing technology and communications issues. President Trump and the American people would be fortunate to have someone of Abby's caliber serving in this administration. As an Assistant Secretary for the Commerce Department, Abby will play an integral role in developing U.S. export control policy to ensure that America can compete with China. She will work closely with federal agencies, our allies, and administration leaders to strengthen our national security while enhancing America's technological and economic competitiveness. America is in a race with China on who will lead in artificial intelligence. Having the right people in positions of leadership gives our country an advantage. I have consistently said that our technology and software should reflect the American values of free speech, individual liberty, and free enterprise. Abby is the right person to fight for these values. Abby's other qualifications show that she is exceptionally well suited for this role. In addition to her work on the committee, she currently serves as the Commerce Department's Deputy General Counsel for Artificial Intelligence and Technology. She also worked on special counsel teams at the Senate Judiciary Committee for the confirmations of Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett to the U.S. Supreme Court. Before coming to the Hill, Abby worked as an associate at Kirkland & Ellis, where she focused on complex commercial litigation and clerked for Judge Elizabeth Branch on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. I am confident that Abby will serve President Trump, Secretary Lutnick, and the American people well as she works to strengthen American innovation, grow our economy, and drive our technological advancement. Our nation will be better for it, and I would encourage the members of this committee to confirm her swiftly. Thank you.
Senator Cruz, it sounds like I should have hired Abby first.
Well, you are now.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. Thank you for taking the time to come over and introduce one of your own. At this point, we will start our 5 minutes with Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and distinguished members of the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee to serve as the Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I am deeply honored to have been nominated by President Trump to serve as the Chief Financial Officer of HUD and grateful for the confidence that both the President and Secretary Scott Turner placed in me. Having previously served as HUD's Chief Financial Officer during the first Trump administration, I am honored by the opportunity to return and continue serving the American people. I would also like to thank my family for their unwavering support throughout the nomination process and throughout my career. As a certified public accountant, I have dedicated my professional life to financial stewardship, accountability, and protecting stakeholder dollars from fraud, waste, and abuse. As someone who grew up with very humble beginnings in the small town of Belvedere, New Jersey, I do not take this opportunity for granted. My hometown is a blue-collar farming community that instilled in me strong work ethic and an appreciation for public service. My father emphasized the importance of hard work from an early age. When I was 12 years old, my brother and I worked on a local produce farm, waking before sunrise to harvest crops. I also worked at a local hot dog stand and a local factory to pay for my college education. Those experiences taught me discipline, responsibility, and the value of earning and savings for the future. I attended Montclair State University as a first-generation college graduate and earned a degree in accounting. I remain actively involved in the university through guest lecturing and service on the advisory board of its business school. Following graduation, I joined Ernst & Young, one of the Big Four auditing firms, where I became a CPA and spent nearly 40 years building a career in public accounting. I ultimately retired as a global client service partner. During that time, I served as a coordinating audit partner for several Fortune 500 companies and advised board of directors, audit committees, and senior executives on corporate governance, financial reporting, internal controls, business transformation initiatives, and mergers and acquisitions. After retiring from Ernst & Young, I sought an opportunity to apply my professional experience to public service. I was honored to be nominated and confirmed as HUD's Chief Financial Officer during Trump's first administration under Secretary Ben Carson. When I arrived at HUD in 2018, the department faced significant financial management challenges. HUD's financial infrastructure included multiple material weaknesses, multiple significant deficiencies, and adverse audit results. Meaningful improvements were needed across governance, people, process, internal controls, and information technology systems. Working alongside Secretary Ben Carson and a dedicated team of public service, we focused on transforming HUD's financial management and technology operations. Through those efforts, HUD eliminated most of its material weaknesses, we strengthened the internal controls, and in 2020, we achieved the first clean audit opinion in 8 years. Building upon that progress, HUD is continuing to modernize its financial operations. One of my key priorities include consolidating and modernizing departments, financial and grants management systems, improving efficiency, enhancing customer service, and strengthening financial oversight and accountability. We refer to this initiative as HUD's Unified Grant System, or HUGS for short. HUGS includes implementing stronger processes to improve transparency and accountability among grantees and subgrantees to track how taxpayer dollars are being spent at the subrecipient level. Also, we are working closely with HUD programs to address longstanding improper payment challenges through comprehensive business process improvements. If confirmed, I will work diligently to ensure that HUD remains a responsible steward of taxpayer resources and continue to strengthen its financial management practices. I am committed to promoting transparency, accountability, operational excellence, and effective support of HUD's missions on behalf of the American people. Thank you, Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and distinguished members of this committee for your consideration of my nomination.
Thank you. I would now recognize Senator from Nevada for questions.
Oh, no,
Oh,
we have to finish the other.
oh I thought we went this way?
yeah.
We went that way. Interesting. We're in the Southern Hemisphere. All right. Recognize Mrs. Warren for your comments.
Thank you, Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and the members of this committee for the opportunity to appear before you today as President Trump's nominee to serve as the Assistant Secretary for Export Administration at the Bureau of Industry and Security. I would like to begin by thanking President Trump for nominating me and Secretary Lutnick and Undersecretary Kessler for their support and confidence. I'm extremely grateful to my former boss, Senator Cruz, for his introduction and kind words. And I'd also like to thank my family, friends, and colleagues who are here with me today, including my parents, Paul and Donna, who drove up from Marietta, Georgia, my hometown, and my husband, Patrick. He is the most wonderful partner, and his encouragement and support have made my public service possible. Throughout my career, I have had the privilege of serving in all three branches of federal government. I have worked in the United States Senate, the federal judiciary, and the executive branch, where I currently serve as the Deputy General Counsel for AI and Technology at the Department of Commerce. Those experiences have provided me with a deep appreciation for our constitutional system, the importance of the rule of law, and the responsibility entrusted to public servants. Over the past 2 years, I have worked across the Commerce Department and with interagency partners throughout the federal government to navigate complex legal questions and advance the department's priorities. Those experiences have prepared me to lead a large organization, manage complex interagency processes, and deliver results in support of the department's national security and economic missions. The Bureau of Industry and Security plays a vital role in protecting the national security, economic security, and unmatched technological achievement and scientific innovation of the United States. Export controls are among the most important tools available to ensure that America's most sensitive technologies, products, and expertise do not contribute to the military modernization or strategic ambitions of our adversaries. At the same time, BIS helps preserve the conditions that prevent the theft of American intellectual property and allow American companies, researchers, and innovators to remain the global leaders in developing the technologies that will shape the future. The evolving landscape presents significant opportunities for BIS to demonstrate its leadership and expand its vital impact. Emerging technologies are developing at an unprecedented speed, supply chains are increasingly global, and strategic competitors are devoting substantial resources to acquiring advanced technologies with military and intelligence applications. Meeting these challenges requires a regulatory system that is effective, adaptable, and grounded in close coordination with our allies and partners. If confirmed, I will faithfully execute the laws enacted by Congress, work to ensure that BIS's export controls are effective and enforceable, and collaborate closely with Congress, our international partners, and stakeholders across the government and industry to advance U.S. national security interests. I am proud of my service at the Department of Commerce and would be honored to continue serving at the American people in this new capacity if I am confirmed. Thank you for your consideration of my nomination, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Warren. Mr. Johnson, you're recognized.
Chairman Scott, Ranking Member Warren, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm also grateful to Senator Capito for her kind introduction of me this morning. I'm very grateful to President Trump for nominating me for the position of director of the CFPB. And I'm eager to help him advance his pro-growth agenda, achieve accountability in government, and promote access, innovation, and competition in the financial marketplace. My wife, Kate, is here with me this morning. I'm forever grateful to her for her steadfast support and partnership, and for her devotion to our 2 young children. I'm also joined here today by my father, Ken, and my stepmother, Nancy. I'm deeply thankful to them and to my sister, Allison, for their love and support. I also know that my late mother, Lynn, watches over me. The great majority of my professional career has been devoted to public service. I've spent the last 14 years substantially focused on the intersection of consumer finance and federal law. I began my career as a junior Senate staffer for Senator John Kyle. I later spent over 5 years working for the House Financial Services Committee, where I focused on consumer credit and financial institutions issues under the leadership of Chairman Jeb Hensarling. I continued my public service at the CFPB, including as its deputy director, where I helped shape the agency's strategy and rulemaking, enforcement, and supervisory activities. I also have experience in the private sector, where I've helped a variety of institutions enhance their compliance with federal consumer financial law. My experiences in these various roles have deepened my conviction that consumer protection is not a zero-sum game, where the CFPB writes clear and durable rules of the road, obeys its own statutory bounds, justly enforces the law, and enables consumers to make their own financial decisions. Both consumers and market participants win. To the contrary, where the CFPB tries to remake markets according to an ideological agenda, it deprives consumers of choice, restricts their access to financial products and services, and drives up costs for providers, which are ultimately borne by customers and investors. If confirmed, I will have 3 priorities: protecting consumers, especially those who are vulnerable to fraud and scams; promoting accountability by ensuring CFPB acts prudently and within its statutory limits; and modernizing CFPB operations. And if confirmed, I pledge to you that I will faithfully execute the law as written. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to your questions and the opportunity to work with each of you and your staff to achieve our shared goal of improving the financial lives of Americans across this great nation. Thank you.
I now recognize Senator Cortez Masto for her questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the nominees, congratulations on your nominations. Welcome to all the family members. I appreciate you all being here and the patience this morning. Mr. Dennis, let me start with you. I have heard from numerous Nevadans about delays in the receipt of HUD funds. And let me talk a little bit about that. The Nevada Homeless Alliance in Nevada has yet to receive its fiscal year 2025 HUD Continuum of Care grant agreement. They need nearly $1 million in funding to help people at risk of experiencing homelessness. The grant period, this new grant period begins on August 1st, 2026, and they still lack an executed grant agreement. If you're appropriated, will you do all you can to get HUD to execute on these grant agreements?
Yes, thank you. You know, the grant agreement, its execution, and is a program decision and a program oversight. The Office of the Chief Financial Officer is responsible for making sure the funds are available and when appropriated, and then also make sure they're accounted for properly once they're dispersed, which is our primary obligation. We do not control the timing of the NOFAs, the Notice of Finance Availability. We do not control the timing of the grant agreements. That's a program decision, so those decisions are made at the program level. Our responsibility is to make sure that they're properly accounted for and available.
So when you say the program level, who at the program level is making that decision?
The assistant secretaries of each of the individual programs.
Is it part of your job to also ensure that the program assistant secretary, whoever's managing that program, follows the law?
Yeah, the programs will that's the program's responsibility.
Correct. But you ensure that they follow the law. I mean, if the money's been appropriated, it's earmarked, it's already been agreed to, and it's supposed to go out, you don't have any obligation under the law to ensure that it's followed?
Yeah, our responsibility in the Chief Financial Officer's office is to make sure that the funds are available and appropriated and then accounted for once they are dispersed.
You have no other obligation in the disbursement. So for instance, the housing trust funds that are awarded to states this month, you have no obligation to ensure that they are dispersed to those states?
Our responsibility is to make sure they're properly accounted for once they're dispersed.
Explain that to me. They're properly accounted for. What does that mean? That
So
the
when money
states properly account for them?
No, not the state, HUD, the federal
Okay.
government.
So your job is just to make sure the money's in the account. You don't have any obligation to ensure that that money that's in the account that has been earmarked for certain specific programs gets out?
Yeah, the programs are responsible for issuing the NOFAs, executing the grant agreement, and then the disbursement of funds. We're responsible to make sure, once the funds are appropriated, they're properly allocated in the accounts, and then once they're dispersed, we make sure that they're properly accounted for and reported. Everything you're referring to is a program responsibility.
And that's the deputy secretary making that
The
decision?
Assistant Secretary,
Assistant secretary.
yes.
All right, thank you. Ms. Warren, many of my colleagues and I have been deeply concerned that loosening export controls on our nation's most advanced semiconductors it will be a major contributor to China's AI progress and reduce America's advantages in this space. That's why I've worked with my colleagues in a bipartisan way to advance legislation like the AI Overwatch Act and the Chip Security Act. I'm curious, you talked a little bit about this, but will you share more about your views on the use of export controls to prevent our most advanced semiconductor technology from flowing to China?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. So when I think about my philosophy here, as an attorney, I go back to the statute. And ECR, I think, outlines how we should be approaching these issues. It says, you know, we need to put national security controls in place export controls in place when there are significant national security concerns, while also recognizing, before we do so, what the economic impact of those controls are. So that's something I think we need to be monitoring really carefully. And BIS has staff that actually is constantly monitoring the new technology that is coming and seeing whether the controls are necessary. My understanding is that there are strong controls in place, but that said, you know, technology is always evolving. We need to keep up to date with everything. And if I'm confirmed, that's something I'm going to make sure the staff is constantly looking at, and I'm constantly looking at as well.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, when you're employed as the Deputy Director at the Consumer Bureau, I was one of many critical of the decision to halt proactive compliance examination of lenders under the Military Lending Act. I will note that during your tenure there, the CFPB did file 9 cases against companies that targeted service members, veterans, and surviving spouses. Let me ask you this. I am concerned that right now the Office of Service Member Affairs has been eliminated. Would you commit to restoring it?
Senator, that office exists by statute. I'll happy to take a look if I'm confirmed and ensure that it's fulfilling its duties.
Would you let me know if it's not? Would you let us know if it needs staff or funding to make sure it continues its statutorily obligated duties?
I will do so, Senator.
Thank you. I know my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Dennis, I'll start with you since we're going from your side to the other. You've helped lead an effort at HUD towards having a clean audit opinion. How is that going? How much more work do you think you need to do there?
Well, we got to a clean audit opinion under the first Trump administration. As I mentioned, when I arrived, there was all kinds of material weaknesses, and we had a disclaimed audit opinion, which means they couldn't opine on it. And we were able to put strong financial controls in place, and we got our first clean audit opinion in 8 years in 2020. When I came back under 47, we got another disclaimer, primarily because of some of the financial controls that I put in place on 45 deteriorated under the prior administration. As an example, we had a controllership function that I put in place that was very helpful to get a clean audit opinion. We had training, we had internal control, infrastructure, testing that went on. Those functions went away, which resulted in a disclaimer in my first year here. We got those controls back in place. We've got those functions filled, and we're working very closely with the programs where a lot of the deterioration happened. So I'm hopeful that we'll be right where we needed to be and get a clean audit opinion this year, but the audit process is ongoing. I'm really focused right now on putting in a subrecipient database. We send out about $77 billion a year to our grantees. We don't know how the grantees spend that money. So what I'm putting in is using AI and technology to get information for every check that's cut from the grantee to the vendor. I want the invoice or the contract that supports that vendor. We'll get that using AI. We'll convert that information into a data lake, and we'll run that data lake and measure it against structured, unstructured, and open source data to see if there's any conflicts, make sure the dollars are being spent as intended, and also in compliance with the grant agreement. So we're really excited about that. We've piloted the program with great success with 10 grantees, and we're hopeful that we'll roll that out this year, and it'll substantially enhance the control environment, but more importantly, how the funds are being spent to make sure they're being spent without fraud, waste, and abuse.
And obviously, the scale of the problem is pretty enormous. The reports that I've seen show almost 26% improper payment rates. I think the number that I have in front of me, $5.8 billion in fraud. I mean, that's an almost unfathomable number. I mean, $5.8 billion in fraud is nuts.
Yeah, so that's for the first time ever, we analyzed all of our voucher payments for fiscal '24. When I came in, we did that right away, and we found a lot of payments that were questionable. It doesn't mean they were fraud. That means they needed to do a little bit of homework, and a lot of those payments were a combination of non-compliance with SAM.gov, paying deceased people, non-conforming Social Security numbers, and then payments that were outside the norm of market value in individual states and or geographical areas. We have that under control. We're putting processes in place to make sure the payments are to SAM.gov compliance, and we'll have good reporting and positive reporting on that in our agency financial report this year. I'm very excited about the progress made in that as well.
So in a couple of years, you're confirmed you're in the job. Your target of 0 makes sense. No fraud. We shouldn't send taxpayer money.
Yeah,
Would you agree on that? The goal should be 0. I think we should just. I'm gonna agree for you that the goal is 0, because any other answer will not be processed by my brain.
The goal is 0.
There you go. Ms. Warren, sometimes obviously we talk about NVIDIA and the chips and the most advanced semiconductors, but sometimes like blocking and tackling old school technology, like just plain old memory chips, become a problem. And there is currently a massive memory chip issue. What are your feelings on that? Do you think we should be looking at making certain that we fill U.S. demand first before we start shipping memory outside the country?
I don't know if it's mutually exclusive. So I think President Trump, and since I've been at the Department of Commerce, has really been focusing on making sure we're getting more memory chip build out here. So I've been involved with the CHIPS program's efforts there. For example, Micron's facility that they're building, and that's been excellent.
But until that comes online, we are going to face this shortage. And I guess I would just, because I'm short of time, I just want your commitment. Please pay attention to that as well.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Johnson, you've been at the CFPB. Something that's near and dear to my heart is obviously the auto business. There's a company called Carvana. I would just like your commitment to work with me on that. They have an approval rating of credit for their customers of nearly 100%. Having been in the car business for a long time, that doesn't exist. There's no scenario in which you approve 100% of your clients. So I would just want you to work with me to see what's going on, what they're doing, and I personally believe they need to be investigated and want your commitment to help me do that.
Senator, if confirmed, I'd be happy to take a look.
Thank you. Now I recognize the ranking member.
Thank you. In January 2025, the CFPB sued Capital One, which is your current employer, Mr. Johnson, and it was sued for cheating its customers out of more than $2 billion in interest payments on their savings accounts. But about a month after President Trump was sworn in and after Capital One donated a cool $1 million to his inauguration, Acting Director Vogt dropped the case against Capital One. This is one of 42 enforcement actions and investigations the CFPB has dropped against big banks and giant corporations since Donald Trump took office. Now, when he was here last week, I asked Director Vogt how many of those 42 cases against companies that we know donated to President Trump, and he said he didn't know how many had donated to President Trump. I said, we know at least some of them: Capital One, Apple, Bank of America, JP Morgan, Toyota, Walmart, Meta. They donate and they get actions from CFPB against them dropped. And who knows if there are more. But what I do know is that we need to clean this corruption up. So, Mr. Johnson, will you commit to notifying Congress and the Inspector General immediately if the White House contacts you about an enforcement action against a Trump family company or a big donor that cheated families?
Senator, when I served at CFPB, that never happened to my knowledge, and I don't anticipate that it would.
That's not my question. My question is, if it does, will you notify Congress and will you notify the Inspector General? Look, there's obviously a problem here. I'm looking for a way to clean it up. You're the guy in the seat who can do this. Will you agree to notify us if you get a call about a political donor or member of the Trump family who is asking about an ongoing investigation?
Senator, with respect, I dispute the premise of the question. I don't anticipate
I don't
that
care whether you
happening.
like the premise. I have given you a set of facts that are not made up. It's happening right now. I want your commitment that if it happens on your watch, you'll pick up the phone and call us. Our job is oversight. That's not so hard. Are you willing to do that?
Senator, I'm not going to engage in a
Okay, so the
hypothetical. I don't
answer is
anticipate that
no.
happening.
You will not try to hose out the corruption. Look, the CFPB is currently being used as an arm of President Trump's ongoing corruption, including his corporate pardon machine. And your answer indicates you're just going to keep that machine humming. So let me ask you about President Trump's plan to kill off the CFPB. Acting Director Vogt tried to fire 90% of the staff. A court told him he can't do that on his own. So now he's proposing to fire half the staff, including almost 300 examiners. Now, those are the financial cops whose job it is to ensure that the banks and the lenders are following the law and treating customers fairly. Mr. Johnson, does going from 350 examiners down to 77 examiners make it more or less likely that companies like your current employer, Capital One, will get away with hurting consumers?
Sir, I believe it depends on the CFPB's examination strategy.
So you think you can do just as much with 77 people as you can with 350 to catch the crooks?
Senator, what I would note is that that staffing plan is subject to litigation.
Yeah, I know it's
Parties
subject to
have-
litigation because he's not allowed to shut it down by himself. All right, let me just ask you then about your turn through the revolving door. You worked at the CFPB as a deputy director from 2017 until 2020, and then you became a VP at Capital One at the same time that the CFPB dropped its enforcement action against Capital One. Mr. Johnson, do you still work for Capital One today?
I do, Senator. I am
So
here
you're
today in
drawing
my
a
personal
paycheck
capacity.
from Capital One right now as you sit here and testify in front of us?
Senator, I'm testifying in my personal capacity today.
Okay, but they're paying you to get confirmed for this job. I understand they're also letting you keep a bonus that you haven't yet earned when you leave. You know, they must be really excited about getting you confirmed here. Congress did not create the CFPB to aid and abet Trump's corruption. You had a chance to take a different path, but all you've done today is indicate you're there to keep the corruption machine humming.
Mr. Johnson, are you aware you're under oath in this hearing?
Yes, I am, Senator.
Have you ever broken the law?
I've had speeding tickets.
As somebody in the car business, I don't know that those do count, but I'm talking about, have you committed a felony?
No, sir.
And do you commit to following the law in your new job?
Yes, sir, I do.
And with God judging you, your dad, your stepmom, and your wife behind you, will you always follow the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America if you were to be confirmed?
Other than my marriage vows, I don't know of any more important oath to take. I will, Senator.
Thank you. I recognize Mr. Reed.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dennis, I just want to make a point, not a question. The Department of Housing and Urban Development operates the Housing Trust Fund, which I helped create in 2008. To build and maintain housing, and affordable housing is one of the most significant problems we have. There is $238 million currently sitting in the trust fund waiting to be allocated. This funding could build and rehab almost 2,000 housing units throughout the United States for individuals with disabilities, senior citizens, other vulnerable Americans. And the funding should have been allocated already. And I hope that you will commit to doing everything possible to get this funding out the door as quickly as possible. And this is not every state in the union is facing this crisis. So I would hope you would make that commitment.
Yeah, thank you. That's a program decision, but I'll work with the program and share your thoughts.
Well, I thank you, but I think this is going to be, well, hopefully within your jurisdiction, and you will do it. Mr. Johnson, the Military Lending Act was enacted in 2006. I was very much involved. It's very personal to me. I had the privilege of commanding soldiers in the 82nd, and it was appalling, frankly, to see young 18-year-olds who were essentially hustled out of a lot of money by slick traders. So one of the things we did is we put a 36% interest cap for military personnel. And in our meeting in my office, you said CFPB does not have the authority to supervise lenders with compliance. And that's, I believe, highly inaccurate. When this issue arose during the first Trump administration, you were the CFPB deputy director, and the Bureau's own legal division concluded that the law does authorize MLA supervision. And this was confirmed in a letter to me March 8th, 2019, from the acting director, Mr. Kreninger. And, Mr. Chairman, I asked you his consent to enter the letter into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you.
I just want to give all the people here time to make sure they object.
The key point here is that this is a tremendous tool in the CFPB toolbox, and to say it doesn't exist is first not accurate, and second, it's really sort of undermining the families, the military families, and it's ironic to me that, you know, everyone's walking around wearing their American flag and we support the troops, yet CFPB is doing very little, not enough, frankly, to help the troops. So I would ask that you set aside these views you gave to me and work actively for MLA enforcement actions. Is that a commitment you'll make?
Absolutely, Senator. When I was at the CFPB before, we had an active MLA enforcement docket. Protecting service members is an important function of the CFPB. It's also of personal interest to myself. I have a cousin serving in the Navy. I want him and all other Americans who put on the uniform and put themselves in harm's way to be protected.
Well, I agree with that sentiment. That has not been the recent history of the CFPB, so you have to change that atmosphere and attitude dramatically, and I'll be watching closely. Ms. Warren, CNBC recently reported that the Department of Commerce unknowingly allowed Chinese-owned companies to import thousands of cutting-edge NVIDIA and AMD chips for almost a full year before closing this loophole in May. And if confirmed, will you commit to reviewing this process and tell us how Commerce let this happen? What was the loophole? And what measures you're implementing to close that loophole?
Senator, thank you for the question, and also thank you for the time for speaking with me the other day. I'm not aware of any such loophole to my knowledge. The rules that are in place should forbid such actions. But that said, if I'm confirmed, I'm absolutely going to take a close look at all the rules in place and also work closely with the export enforcement side of the House and make sure that they have everything they need to vigorously enforce those rules and everything that's on the books already.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I now recognize Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Johnson, last week I asked Acting Director Vogt if he'd like to get rid of the CFPB. He was sitting on the dais right there, and his answer was yes. President Trump has said he'd like to get rid of the CFPB, so I have a simple question. Would you like to eliminate the CFPB?
Senator, that's not my intention. The CFPB is a creature of statute. Congress has assigned to it important laws to implement and execute, and my intention is to execute the law.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So you would agree that it's important for the CFPB to deliver monetary relief to consumers that they're entitled to under the law?
Senator, I agree that it's important for the CFPB to execute the laws under its responsibility. I have testified in the past that properly structured and properly governed, the CFPB is capable of great good. However, I think there are deficiencies in the current legislative structure, and I have advocated in the past for changes to the CFPB's authority and structure to ensure that it's better able to execute its mission.
Do you think it can do its job making sure that consumers who've gotten screwed and cheated, do you think it can do that job with an 80% cut to its enforcement staff?
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, Senator, that staffing plan is subject to litigation. The parties have stayed that litigation pending the confirmation of a director, and I would pledge to you to have an open mind to take a look at staffing levels with the agency.
You would agree that if there was an 80% cut in the enforcement authorities at the Department of Justice, that there are a lot of people who might not be getting their cases brought to ensure justice. Would you agree with that?
Sarah, it depends on the internal strategy and what other resources are available.
Okay. I would just suggest if you get rid of 80% of your enforcement staff, that should be a pretty simple answer. More people get cheated and less of them get any kind of accountability. Ms. Warren, you would agree that the Bureau of Industry and Security plays an important role in protecting our national security, would you not?
Yes, sir.
So last week, BIS announced that it was loosening restrictions on very sensitive exports to the UAE, United Arab Emirates. The rule expressly makes it easier to export these sensitive technologies to a UAE company called G42. According to press reports just yesterday, the Trump administration issued the rule over the warnings of BIS career staff, that the career staff were concerned that G42 had ties to China, creating a risk that any advanced technology exported to G42 could wind up in Chinese hands. You currently work at the Commerce Department. Are you aware of the national security concerns expressed about G42 by the career staff at BIS?
I'm not aware of any specific concerns. That said, I very much value the career staff at BIS. I've worked closely with them. And my understanding of the role that BIS did and the rule change was to recognize the close partnership that the UAE has had, especially with the recent conflict in Iran.
Well, let's talk about that closer, sometimes cozy relationship, especially with the president and the president's family. Are you aware that Sheikh Tahnoon, who's a member of the Emirati royal family, is G42's chair, and that he bought $500 million of stock in World Liberty Financial just days before Donald Trump was sworn in? World Liberty Financial, of course, is the Trump family crypto business. Were you aware of that transaction?
No, sir.
Did you hear anything about it?
I've seen the general reports after the rule change, but I'm not familiar
It
with
was a front page Wall Street Journal story, and it's been much discussed in this committee and other committees. So I just want to be clear what's going on here. We have a situation where the career staff have concerns about G42. The president has a $500 million relationship with its chair. And lo and behold, G42 gets access to very sensitive technologies that the career staff at BIS warned could fall into China's hands. I hope that, if confirmed, you will really dig into this. That's on top of about a $2 billion investment that the UAE royal family, Sheikh Danoon, made in World Liberty Financial months after the president's inauguration. So you have $500 million before the inauguration, $2 billion later. This stinks. And I hope whoever's in this position will start to clean it up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I recognize Senator Warnock for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Fair Housing Initiatives Program helps. The Fair Housing Initiatives Program helps local governments and nonprofit organizations enforce the nation's fair housing laws. In fact, nearly 3 in 4 fair housing complaints are first heard by these organizations who use federal funds to investigate complaints and conduct education about renters' rights. Mr. Dennis, you're nominated to be the Chief Financial Officer at HUD, but you're basically doing the job right now. So I would imagine that you are aware that HUD recently announced they were making $83 million available under this Fair Housing Initiative. How many of these dollars will go to these experienced nonprofits who help so many Americans with their fair housing complaints?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how those dollars will flow or how much. That's a program decision. You know, within the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, we're responsible for making sure those funds are available, and then they're properly accounted for once they leave HUD and reported.
So you're not aware. So let me tell you that the answer is 0. HUD does not reserve funding for these organizations, and it explicitly disqualified prior recipients from certain funds. So HUD is reserving $0 for these organizations that are actually experienced with addressing these issues around fair housing. They're the first line of defense. They're the ones who see it, and none of them will receive anything. So how is this consistent with the law, which requires funds to be made available to experienced nonprofit fair housing enforcement organizations? That's what the law says.
Yeah, again, they're program decisions, and they're done in consultation with general counsels. But I will assure you that we are following the law. We will not do anything to violate the law.
I assure you that it's not consistent with the law, and that it's bad practice to just disqualify the organizations that are actually experienced with doing this work. And I hope that you will rethink this if confirmed to this position. Mr. Johnson, thank you for meeting with me in my office earlier this week. If confirmed, you will lead the CFPB, a regulator that the Trump administration has decimated. Last week, this committee had Acting Director Russell Vogt before us, and he replied yes when Senator Van Hollen asked if he favored eliminating the CFPB. You're up for the nomination. Same question, yes or no. Do you agree with Mr. Vogt, and do you favor eliminating the CFPB, yes or no?
Senator, I've advocated for legislative restructuring of the agency to ensure that it can better enforce
Do you agree with
the law.
eliminating it, yes or no?
If
The question is eliminating it. Do you think it should be eliminated, yes or no?
Senator, if confirmed, I'll enforce the law, which includes Title 10 of Dodd-Frank.
You want to answer the question. Last week, Mr. Vogt also noted that the CFPB has imposed, quote, huge costs on the American people since its inception. Yes or no, do you agree with Mr. Vogt that the CFPB, an agency which, by the way, has returned $21 billion to consumers who were harmed, who were defrauded by bad actors, his opinion is that it has imposed, quote, huge costs on Americans. Last question, Mr. Vogt also told us that he believed the CFPB's medical debt rule was illegal. In fact, under his direction, the CFPB never defended the rule in court and instead sided with debt collectors. Let's assume the rule was legal for the sake of argument. Do you think the medical debt rule was a good idea?
Senator, my understanding of the resolution of that case was that the district court judge actually did reach the merits of that case and found that the CFPB exceeded its statutory authority in promulgating that rule.
I'm asking you, do you think it was a good idea or a bad idea to protect millions of Americans from medical debt? I'm
Well-
asking you a policy question.
Yes, sir. And I appreciated our conversation on this when we met. I do think there are two important policy principles here. One is ensuring the integrity and accuracy of information that's in the credit reporting system itself, and the CFPB's responsibility under FCRA is to ensure that integrity. As I mentioned to you also, I don't want
You
folks to
can't
be
say-
unfairly punished for, incurring debts that are, something that they didn't anticipate for. If this happened to my family, I would do everything I could to ensure that they are safe. So
I appreciate that perspective. I hope it gets us to a much better place than where we find ourselves. Thanks.
Senator Gallego.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dennis, would you say you're, as a former auditor, you pride yourself on fiscal responsibility and catching waste?
Yes.
Well, let's do some quick tests here. Would you say that $600 million on a ballroom, half of which is paid for from American taxpayers, is that a good fiscal decision, yes or no?
I'm sorry, 600 what?
$600 million on a ballroom, half of which is from American taxpayers, is that a good fiscal decision, yes or no?
Oh, I'm not going to get involved in what the White House is doing or opining.
Would you be able to answer this question? As HUD CFO, this is literally the job, stewarding the public money instead of watching it set on fire. So let's try a much easier one. How about $5 million in taxpayer dollars on gilding statues? Would that be a good decision?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
How about nearly $8 million of taxpayer money to paint the Eisenhower building white? Would that be a good decision of money?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, I haven't gotten to the other $6 trillion this administration is dumping onto the national debt over the next 10 years with the One Big Beautiful Bill, a bill that has ripped health care and SNAP benefits away from many, many Arizonans and millions of Americans, and blowing hundreds of millions of dollars on a ballroom and vanity projects isn't really fiscally responsible whatsoever, while Americans are getting screwed right now. So the reason I ask these questions is people are wondering what's going to happen with this country and this country's budget and their money. So hardworking Arizonans aren't really a slush fund for this administration. They're vanity projects. Mr. Johnson, question, how would you describe your relationship with Russell Vogt?
Well, I came to know Mr. Vogt because we were both former staff members for Jeb Henserling.
So, Mr. Johnson, I apologize. One CFPB employee facing termination described you and acting CFPB Director Russell Vogt as two peas in a pod. Do you agree with that characterization? Are you and Russell two peas in a pod?
Senator, I'm not Russell Vogt. If confirmed,
I can tell that.
I would make my own decisions.
Can you name one decision made by Acting Director Vogt during his time at the CFPB that you disagree with?
None come to mind at the moment.
For example, one thing I definitely agree is, do you agree with cancellation of the $80 million order against Navy Federal Credit Union? That was money owed to cheated service members and their families.
Senator, I wasn't at the CFPB. I don't know the facts at hand that led to consideration of any enforcement action.
Okay, do you agree with killing the rule that stopped Americans' personal data from being sold without consent was a bad decision?
I'm sorry, to which rule are you referring, Senator?
The rule to stop the personal data from being sold on the open market.
I'm not sure that I understand exactly which rule you're referring to.
Okay, fine, moving on. You spoke about this earlier. Do you agree with putting medical debt back on Americans' credit reports?
That was a rule that was attempted to be promulgated by the CFPB. It was challenged, and the court determined that the CFPB had exceeded its statutory authority.
So you agree then it was a good decision?
I was just recounting what the court said, which is that the CFPB didn't have the authority to promulgate that rule.
So regardless of that, you would say that you're okay with it then?
Well, Senator Warnock could also question me on this, sir, and I understand the real burden that families can face if they're facing medical debts. I think the government should be looking for opportunities to help those folks in that circumstance. I also said that another policy principle at stake is the accuracy and integrity of information in the credit reporting system. And I think it's a question that policymakers should consider.
So moving on to, back to the CFPB statute requires, in terms of Office of Older Americans and Office of Serving Members Affairs, among others, these offices serve millions of people. Those offices obviously can't be staffed with a small handful of staffers, especially in the nature of what's going on. Is that correct?
Those are offices that were created by the Dodd-Frank Act, and
right.
the staffing levels are subject to ongoing litigation.
So Dodd-Frank requires an office dedicated to older Americans. It handles financial abuse. We have big retirement communities in Arizona, pension protection retirement scams, things of that nature. Do you agree that an office that can't really do its job properly if it's done by a skeleton crew?
Senator, I had laid out one of my priorities in my opening statement, which is to protect Americans from fraud and scam, and that includes older Americans who may be uniquely vulnerable to those scams.
And how can you do that if
Take
it's going to
seriously.
be, these offices are going to be gutted and aren't going to have the proper staffing to do that?
Senator, I have an open mind about staffing levels for offices, and my understanding of the state of litigation is that I'll have the opportunity to make those judgments.
Go back.
That concludes the question and answer portion of today's hearing. I'd like to thank our nominees for testifying before the committee today, and thank you for your willingness to serve our country. For senators, all follow-on questions for the record must be submitted by Friday, July 24th at noon. Witnesses, please respond by Friday, July 31st at noon to the written questions you receive in order to facilitate this committee promptly processing these nominations. With that, this hearing is adjourned.